Okay, let's dive in. What if a lot of the advice we've always gotten about money, that standard path to financial security,
The whole go to school, get the degree, get a good job thing.
exactly that. What if that whole path isn't really well designed to build actual wealth for you? What if some of the basic ideas we have about money are, according to our resource today, kind of working against us?
The really striking idea, isn't it? It definitely pushes back against beliefs many of us, grew up hearing constantly.
Yeah.
And our source for this deep dive, it's a conversation with an entrepreneur, a financial educator, who kind of found this out the hard way.
Yeah.
Not through school, but through his own, sometimes pretty tough personal journey that made him question everything.
Right. So that's our mission today. Dig into his story, his insights. We want to pull out the really key nuggets of knowledge, explore this different way of looking at money and building wealth,
Hmm.
and hopefully give you some, powerful ideas to maybe challenge your own thinking and just get better informed about how things might work outside that traditional box.
Yeah, it's less about saying do this, not that, and more about understanding a whole different framework, maybe a different way of seeing the financial game, you could say.
Yeah.
A game that people who build, serious wealth seem to just get.
So let's start right there. That conventional path, the one we're all sort of steered towards. School counselors, parents, just society.
Yeah.
Very linear, right?
Yeah.
Do well in school, go to college, get that degree, land a job with a good company, and then just climb slowly
Right.
for decades. Maybe get a pension.
And for the speaker we're focusing on, Jaspreet, saying this wasn't just like background noise, it was everything. He talks about growing up in a traditional immigrant family where the pressure was just immense.
Right.
And the options felt really narrow. He basically says it was become a doctor or you're a failure.
Hmm.
Nothing else really counted. He saw his parents working incredibly hard all the time, believing that was the key. And he totally bought into it.
So he was on that track, college, studying for the MCATs, prepping for med school. But while he's doing all this studying, he starts reading other stuff.
Business books, finance books, not medical texts. And that's where, the first little cracks started showing in that belief system.
How so?
Well, he talks about this one moment. He's in the library, MSAT books everywhere, takes a break, just starts browsing online, Googles the richest people in America,
Okay.
and the names popping up, Gates, Buffett, Jobs, Zuckerberg, none of them were doctors.
None were lawyers either. Right. The other sort of acceptable path.
Exactly. So this simple search, looking at who actually had massive wealth, it just didn't line up with the formula he was following so carefully.
The formula being work hard in school, get good grades, get a good job, make good money. More effort equals more money, basically.
Right. But the people at the absolute top, it seemed like they'd skip steps, or maybe they built something completely different, not just a ladder, maybe a whole different structure.
And this led him to a pretty big realization. He calls it uncovering a lie.
Yeah, and the lie wasn't that you don't need to work hard. It was about what you should be working for if wealth is the goal. The traditional path teaches you to work to climb the ladder, be an employee, focus on your salary.
Not the wealthy.
He realized they're working to own the ladder. They focus on equity, on ownership, on assets. It's a fundamental shift in perspective.
Okay, so this questioning, this idea that the blueprint might be flawed, that starts him on what he calls a painful emotional journey. Painful, I guess, because it goes against expectations, but it also pushes him to actually do something different.
Precisely. And his entrepreneurial side actually started showing even earlier. High school, he had this little event planning business helping DJs with teen parties.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, just a side thing.
Yeah.
But he took that hustle with him to the University of Michigan. He expected everyone there to be super focused on studies, like him. But instead, he found this huge party scene. Kids spending money like they didn't have to worry about it.
He found an opportunity there.
Yeah. Instead of needing money up front to book clubs, he went to them and said, look, I'll bring the people. We just split the cover charge 50-50. No upfront risk for them.
Clever. So he wasn't just trading his time anymore.
Exactly. He started making, as he says, a little bit of money. Enough to notice, And it was around then, running this little business and reading those books, that he first heard the term entrepreneurship.
And realized,
Oh, that's what I'm doing. He was already learning business by doing it, totally outside the classroom.
so this experience, plus the books, they started pointing him in a new direction.
Yeah, and one theme kept coming up in those business books. Wealthy people invest in real estate.
Which was totally new territory for him.
Completely. Not something his family did, no connections, no knowledge, just this idea from the books.
And the timing here is pretty important, right? This was after the 2008 crash.
Exactly. The financial crisis had hammered the economy, and Michigan's real estate market was hit especially hard. Prices were way down.
Creating opportunity.
If you were paying attention, yeah. So the seed was planted, and then, it sounds almost impulsive, he's supposed to be studying for the MCAT, maybe getting bored, still researching rich people online, and the thought hits him, maybe I should buy some real estate. Just like that. He starts looking online between study sessions.
And this is where it gets kind of wild, right? He's 19, studying for med school.
Yeah. He finds a property, goes for it, and closes on his first investment, a condo, the day after he takes the MCAT.
Wow. Okay. And the price. You mentioned Michigan was hit hard.
Almost unbelievable today. He bought it for $8,000.
$8,000?
Yeah. The source mentions it was a foreclosure, had sold for something like $150,000 just a few years before. He even negotiated it down a bit from $8,400 asking to $8,000.
Incredible. So he buys it for $8K, puts in a bit more work.
A few $1,000s, he says. Then he rents it out.
And the result?
He leased it for $600 a month. And this was the real mind-blown moment for him about money. Because here's this property, generating income, cash flow. It felt almost passive to him then. And this money is coming in while he's pouring all his energy into becoming a doctor. The path, everyone said, was the way to make money.
It just highlights the total disconnect.
Absolutely. That little condo, making money while he slept, basically, versus the intense grind of pre-med.
Yeah.
It really amplified that internal conflict he was feeling.
That emotional dilemma he talked about.
Exactly. On one hand, you have this massive weight of family expectation. Be a doctor. Make your parents proud. It's safe. It's respected.
And on the other hand,
he's seeing this other path, wealth, through ownership, through assets like that condo. And he's starting to question if he even really wanted to be a doctor. Was it his dream or just the expected one?
And he saw potential conflict even in the work itself, right?
Yeah, he recognized that a doctor's income is often tied to seeing more patients, volume, which, could potentially clash with wanting to give each patient the absolute best care, the most value, regardless of how many you see.
Whereas his entrepreneurial brain was already thinking differently.
Right, thinking about scalability, different ways to create value and income that weren't just trading hours for dollars in that direct way.
So he makes the decision. He's not going to be a doctor. How did his parents take it?
Oh, it was rough. He says his dad was angry, his mom furious, just devastated. It wasn't a quick thing either. He said it took his mom about 1.5 years to even start coming around.
And it wasn't just his parents.
No, he mentions getting calls from aunts, uncles, extended family, some calling him a disgrace for throwing away this opportunity, this prestigious path.
Wow, that's intense pressure.
Huge. But despite all that emotional fallout, he just knew. He said the traditional path is not for me. He felt like there was more to this thing, this whole money and wealth thing that he had to figure out.
And that conviction, plus maybe the pain of disappointing everyone, pushed him into that deep dive of self-education.
Exactly. School didn't teach him this stuff, so he had to teach himself. Really digging into money, business, investing, trying to understand how it all actually worked.
And through that process, he came to a pretty stark conclusion about why financial education isn't really taught in schools.
Yeah. His take is quite provocative. He basically argues that widespread financial illiteracy is actually profitable for some very powerful players in the system.
Like banks, for example. How do they benefit?
Well, think about when you put your savings in a bank. To the bank, your cash is actually a liability on their books. They owe it back to you.
Okay.
An asset makes you money. The liability costs you money. So they don't want that cash just sitting there. They want to lend it out ASAP because that loan becomes an asset for them, earning interest.
But banks are always telling us to save more.
Of course they are. They need your cash to lend out. But while your money sits there, especially in a typical low-interest savings account, inflation is eating away at its value every single day. He made a video about this years ago when inflation was like 2–3%. I imagine now. So the bank pays you next to nothing. He mentions rates like 0.01% to 0.5%, turns around, lends your money out at maybe 5–6%, and pockets the difference. That spread is huge profit for them.
And it's not just savings accounts. Credit cards too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Credit card debt is a massive profit center. With interest rates often between 18% and 25%, they make a fortune when people carry balances. The system kind of encourages spending, especially on credit, over careful saving or investing.
Okay, so banks benefit. What about his point about governments also profiting from financial illiteracy?
His argument there is that people who aren't financially savvy tend to remain employees and consumers. And in most tax systems, employees and consumers pay the highest tax rates on their income and spending.
This connects to that whole rich people don't pay taxes idea that makes people so angry.
Exactly. And he unpacks that. It's not usually about illegal tax evasion. It's about legal tax avoidance. The wealthy understand the rules of the tax code, or they hire people who do, and they structure their finances legally to minimize their tax burden in ways most employees just don't know about or can't access.
And the student loan point he makes is just staggering.
It really is. He points at this incredible, kind of horrifying fact. Student loans are the #1 liability for young people in the U.S., holding them back from buying homes, investing, starting families.
Mhm.
But at the same time, those same student loans are the #1 asset on the U.S. government's balance sheet.
So the government encourages taking on debt for education. That debt becomes a government asset, while simultaneously potentially crippling the financial future of the very people taking it on.
It paints a picture, doesn't it? Where the system, maybe intentionally, maybe not, benefits from having a large population that stays in that employee-consumer category, paying higher taxes, and not leveraging the financial system the way owners and investors do.
Which leads right into this core idea. Wealthy people see money and taxes differently. It's like a game.
Yes, exactly. A game with rules. And the rule book, especially for taxes, is the IRS code. It's incredibly complex. People who play the game well, they understand the rules, or more likely they hire experts, top-tier accountants, tax lawyers who live and breathe those rules.
And the key difference is playing within the rules, right? Avoidance, not evasion.
Absolutely crucial distinction. Evasion is illegal, hiding income, lying. Avoidance is structuring things legally, using the deductions, the credits, the strategies the code actually allows to pay the minimum tax required by law. He mentions he actually spent time learning tax law himself because it's so important.
So how does this work in practice? What are some of these strategies?
Well, a big part of it for entrepreneurs or investors is structuring things so you don't have traditional income like a salary, or using business expenses to legally reduce your taxable income.
He gives the Elon Musk example, which is pretty well known.
Right. Musk doesn't take a big salary from Tesla. He gets paid largely in stock options or grants. So his wealth is tied up in the company's value, not sitting as cash income.
But he needs money to live, to invest.
So instead of selling huge amounts of stock, which would trigger massive capital gains taxes, he takes out loans using his stock as collateral.
And loans aren't taxed as income.
Exactly. That's the key. He gets cash, pays relatively low interest on the loan, maybe 3–5%, the source suggests, while his stock hopefully continues to grow at a higher rate, maybe 6% or more. He gets liquidity without the huge tax hit. It's complex, but legal.
Okay, that's one high-level example. What about for, say, a more typical business owner? Deductions seem key.
Huge. The mindset shifts to, how can I make this a legitimate business expense? If you can tie an expense directly to your business activity and document it properly, it can often be deducted, reducing your taxable profit.
Like business meals.
Yeah, he mentioned that temporary rule where 100% of business meals were deductible. So taking your team out wasn't just good for morale, it was also a tax write-off.
He used personal examples too, right? The trip to San Diego.
Yeah, he framed a 2-month trip as a business trip. Renting a car he wanted anyway, a Mustang, became a business transport cost. Staying in an Airbnb instead of a hotel, a business lodging expense.
Because, as he says,
When you're an entrepreneur, everything is work. The lines blur. If you're strategic and document things, many lifestyle costs can potentially become business deductions.
he also talked about the heavy vehicle deduction, buying a G-Wagon.
Right, that tax rule allows for significant depreciation, sometimes 100% in the first year, for vehicles over a certain weight. His accountant apparently suggested a G-Wagon could make sense for him, tying into his brand.
But he added a really important warning there.
Crucial point, don't spend money just for the tax deduction. As he put it, don't spend $1 to save 25 cents. It only makes sense if it's a necessary or genuinely useful business expense anyway. Otherwise, you're just wasting money to feel clever about taxes. You have to be smart.
Which underlines why having good advisors is so critical. Not just someone who fills out forms, but someone who understands strategy.
Exactly. A guide who knows the ever-changing rules and can help you plan before you spend the money.
And this all ties back to that sort of philosophical question he raises. Who uses money better?
Yeah, the government through taxes, or entrepreneurs reinvesting their profits. His perspective is clearly that entrepreneurs create jobs, innovation, value, and often give back more directly. He used that example of buying out a teacher supply store.
It's definitely a perspective that challenges the standard thinking about taxes and wealth redistribution.
It forces you to think about incentives, at least. Where does money create the most value?
Okay, so if understanding this game is key, what are the core lessons he thinks people should be learning, especially when they're young? He has these 5 key things.
Right. The stuff he wishes he knew between, say, 10 and 20. This is the financial education he had to find for himself. And lesson number 1 is maybe the most fundamental. What even is money?
And his answer is pretty blunt. Paper money, dollars, are fake.
Yeah, provocative, right. He calls it fiat currency. It's not backed by gold anymore, just by faith in the government. Pieces of paper.
And the implication of that.
Is that just saving dollars is a losing game because of inflation. He's adamant. Saving cash actually makes you poorer over time as its buying power shrinks. He had to unlearn the idea that a big savings account equals wealth.
Okay, so if saving dollars isn't the goal, what do wealthy people work for? That's lesson 2.
Right. The traditional path says, work for a job, a salary, climb the ladder.
Mm-hmm.
But he argues wealthy people work to own the ladder. They work for equity.
Meaning ownership.
Exactly. Owning a piece of the company, an asset.
Yeah.
Their main focus isn't the paycheck, but the share of profits or the increase in the asset's value.
He connected this to fiduciary duty, right? From law school.
Yeah, the corporate executives legally have a duty to the shareholders, the owners, first and foremost. Their job is to increase shareholder value. That helps explain, in his view, why executive pay, often tied to stock value, can be so disconnected from employee wages.
So how do you get equity if you're not starting your own company?
Well, if your company is public, you can buy its stock. Maybe they offer stock options or profit sharing. If not, you take the money you earned from your job and you buy equity in other things, other stocks, real estate, maybe invest in a friend's startup. You use your earnings to acquire ownership.
Lesson 3, think bigger. This sounds like it's about mindset.
Totally. It's about breaking through those self-limiting beliefs. He uses himself as an example growing up feeling like his background meant certain things weren't possible for him. His parents doubted him too.
But he argues you have to push past that.
Yeah, and it starts small. Make that first $100 investment, see how it works. Today, with apps and the internet, it's so much easier to just start. Once you take that first step, the next one becomes clearer.
He makes a point about opportunity too, especially in the U.S.
Right. People risk everything to come here for opportunity. If you're already here, speak the language, have internet access, he says you're blessed. You have the tools. But crucially, you have to learn and you have to do. Opportunity isn't passive.
Okay, lesson 4 is a big one today. Understand debt.
Oh, yeah. He sees this as a massive trap. The pressure to live that flex lifestyle, showing off cars, clothes, vacations on social media, it pushes people into debt just to look rich.
While actually keeping them broke.
Exactly. And making the luxury companies, like LVMH, incredibly wealthy. He pointed out how luxury sales boomed even during the pandemic uncertainty, partly because people spent stimulus money on goods.
And things like buy now, pay later make it even easier.
Dangerously easy.
Yeah.
Fastest growing fintech sector, he says. Lets you buy stuff you can't afford right now, often with huge interest if you miss payments.
Plus the old standby, credit card debt.
Still a huge problem. He cited the average household debt around $6,500 then, paying maybe 18–25% interest. That interest makes the credit card companies rich, not you.
It goes back to assets versus liabilities. Debt for liabilities is bad.
Definitely. Going into debt for things that lose value, cars, clothes, electronics, and paying high interest on top, that just drains the money you could be using to build wealth.
So his rule for debt is?
Simple and strict. Never finance anything that isn't going to pay you back.
No financing Gucci, vacations, fancy cars.
Nope. He practiced what he preached. Drove a $500 car when he was making $1 million a year, then a $4 car for years in LA. Investing came first. Looking rich came. Well, much later, if at all. Buy a used car with cash instead.
What about getting out of bad debt?
Be aggressive. Cut spending to the bone. Live way below your means. Call the credit card companies. Try to negotiate lower rates or balances. Maybe use a 0% transfer card, but only if you are absolutely sure you can pay it off before the high interest kicks in. Attack the debt.
But is all debt bad? What about good debt?
He acknowledges it can exist, but with big caveats. Debt can be a tool if you use it to buy an income-producing asset, like maybe a rental property, and you know how to manage it. But it's not for everyone. He himself has no personal debt now, but might take it on for the right real estate deal.
And his own real estate strategy now, it's changed since that first condo.
Yeah, he owns dozens of units now, mostly paid off. His focus is purely on cash flow. He says he never looks at what can I sell this property for. He's not banking on appreciation. He wants income. Buys in areas where jobs and money are moving in.
What about that first $8K condo?
Still has it. Says it's worth $100 or $120K now and brings in $850 a month after expenses. Pretty amazing return.
But he's shifting focus now.
More towards his business's minority mindset market briefs. Sees higher potential there now and is where his passion is.
Okay, which brings us to lesson 5. Be willing to make mistakes, take risks, and start.
This is huge. Fear stops so many people. Fear of losing money, fear of messing up.
But his take is that mistakes are inevitable.
Not just inevitable, they're tuition. Your real education. You will make mistakes, you will lose money sometimes, he certainly has. But you learn invaluable lessons you can't get any other way.
He shared a story about his worst deal ever.
Oh yeah, the Detroit property nightmare. His third deal, ironically, says he made every mistake possible.
Like what?
Didn't get an inspection, trusted a bad contractor, paid him up front. Contractor vanished.
Oh no.
Then he let someone live there rent-free to fix it up, gave him a Home Depot charge card. The guy used it for other projects, didn't fix the house, let his dog damage it.
This sounds awful.
It gets worse. Trying to evict him was hell because there was no lease. Property got trashed. Hired a new contractor, found major hidden problems, needed permits for everything.
Right.
City inspectors were inconsistent, adding costs and delays. $100 permit just to paint windowsills.
Unbelievable.
Finally got a licensed tenant in, then an inspector comes back, finds she's running an illegal daycare, forces another eviction.
For the outcome.
He sold it at a loss.
Right.
Only deal he ever lost money on.
Wow. But the lesson.
Resilience. And realizing you need a team. Good inspectors, contractors, managers, lawyers. Investing, he says, is a full contact sport. You're going to get punched in the gut. You need to be prepared for that, mentally and emotionally.
Losing money hurts.
Deeply. It's psychological. You need to be ready for the ups and downs.
How does he manage his own portfolio now, psychologically?
He diversifies. Real estate, stocks, startups, crypto, physical gold, roughly in that order of value now. But start up his own businesses are the top priority.
He talked about stock market psychology specifically.
Yeah, how the constant updates, the liquidity can be like a drug, almost addictive. He tried day trading, made some, lost some, realized it just ate time and wasn't for him.
So his approach is long-term.
Definitely. Not a trader. He uses a passive strategy. Automatic weekly, monthly buys into broad, low-cost ETFs, S&P 500, growth, emerging markets, plus some physical gold via an app and daily small buys of Bitcoin.
Why the gold?
He sees it as real money, the store of value, insurance, protection in case everything else goes wrong.
And the crypto.
Part of the passive, consistent buy. Views it long-term. Then there's his active strategy. This takes real work, researching specific real estate deals, aiming for 7% cash on cash, analyzing individual stocks, fundamentally revenues, profits, etc., investing in his own businesses and other startups, and strategically buying more crypto when prices crash.
So where does his actual income come from now?
Mainly two streams. His businesses, Minority Mindset brand, Market Briefs newsletter, Market Insiders app, and the cash flow from his paid-off real estate. He says the business side is the biggest revenue generator now, and he uses YouTube revenue specifically to fund the other ventures like Market Briefs.
That whole business building journey, the YouTube channel, that wasn't planned either, was it?
Not at all. It started from a grad school public speaking class. He had to pitch a product, stepped in a puddle, got soaked socks. Boom. Idea for water-resistant socks.
Seriously, so he started a sock company?
Yep. Developed it, launched it, he even got scammed by a marketing company along the way, lost like $3,500.
Oh.
But the launch went well, despite that. Still, people made fun of him, leaving medicine for socks. He got frustrated that people didn't see his vision, didn't support him.
And that led to?
He created a cheap Udemy course. How to start a business without getting screwed? Wasn't about money. Just wanted to help others avoid the scams he fell for.
And people liked it.
Loved it. Started asking for more social media, blog, videos. That's when he started Minority Mindset online, reflecting his feeling of thinking differently.
YouTube came next.
Yeah, started super basic, filming on his phone. No plan to make money from it. A friend later told him about monetization. His goal was just sharing what he wished he'd known, being a helping hand.
And he realized the impact it was having.
Yeah, when people started recognizing him, telling him his videos helped them get out of debt. He mentioned one really emotional time getting acai bowls. His dad was with him, and someone came up sharing their story.
That must have been huge, especially with his dad there, after the initial conflict about leaving medicine.
Incredibly validating, you imagine. Proved he was creating real value. But as the brand grew, it became too tied to him. Hard to build a separate company structure.
So he took that thinking trip.
Yeah, Boca Raton, 2021. Disconnected, just a notebook, realized he is minority mindset, the philosophy. But the companies needed their own identities. Market briefs for the newsletter, market insiders for the app.
And he launched those in 2022, funded by YouTube.
Yep. Wasn't easy, though. Had big problems with an email provider backing out last minute, had to rebuild systems. Painful stuff.
But the mission stayed the same.
Absolutely. Making financial news easy to understand, witty, accessible, filling that financial education desert.
This all comes back to that mindset difference he talks about, abundance versus poor mindset.
Right. The poor mindset is always looking at what someone else has, counting their money. Like that couple obsessed with getting half his real estate commission instead of focusing on the bigger prize, the house itself, jumping over dollars to pick up pennies.
Focusing on scarcity.
Exactly. Instead of focusing inward, what can I do? How can I grow?
And the abundance mindset.
It's about thinking bigger, not just how can I save 5% more from my $40 salary, but how can I turn that 40K into 400K? Increase the size of the whole pie. If you do that, even saving the same percentage results in vastly more wealth.
And the first step is believing it's even possible.
Crucial first step, believing you can do it regardless of where you start. Then comes the learning, the doing, the mistakes, learning from the mistakes. And the resources, he stresses, are out there. Books, YouTube, courses, more accessible than ever.
So wrapping up this whole deep dive, challenging norms, understanding the system, self-education, action, it really emphasizes resilience, learning from failure.
And channeling that into helping others, making this stuff less intimidating. He knows money is taboo for many, often because of insecurity.
Yeah.
But he frames it as one part of a balanced life. Physical, mental, spiritual health come first.
The quadruped triangle idea?
Right. Those three are the base. Financial health is the icing on the cake. You need a good cake first. Money won't fix fundamental health issues.
But once the foundation is solid,
then financial health can have the biggest positive impact. Freedom, less stress, ability to pursue your goals.
So if he had to boil it all down, his 3 truths.
First, think bigger. You're probably capable of way more than you believe. He used his own early YouTube goals as an example. Never imagine hitting 100K subs, let alone millions. Don't limit yourself.
7.
Learn the rules to the game. Don't just get mad about the system or how the wealthy operate. Learn the rules yourself. Tax code, investing principles. That's where the opportunity is. Understand how it works.
And 3rd.
Be willing to make mistakes. Try. Nothing happens if you don't act. Take risks, accept you'll mess up, learn, keep going. It's a grind, but it's necessary.
His definition of greatness ties into that, doesn't it?
Yeah, always striving for better, always wanting to be a little bit better every single day. Continuous improvement.
And that idea of improving, of growth, connects to that final point you made about personal asset appreciation.
Investing in yourself. He argues it's the ultimate investment. Your knowledge, your skills, your mindset, the potential return on that is infinite, unlike any stock or property.
So the final thought maybe is, if investing in yourself has infinite potential, how does that change how you prioritize your own time, your learning? How does it change your definition of success away from just, dollars and cents?
It's a powerful lens to look through.
Yeah.
Definitely gives you a different way to think about allocating your most valuable resource, your own potential.
Well, this has been a really insightful dive into challenging how we think about money, wealth, and the paths we're told to follow.
Yeah, it really underscores that becoming financially literate isn't just about numbers. It's about mindset, perspective, and the willingness to learn and adapt, even if it means going against the grain.
We really hope this conversation sparked some new ideas and maybe encourages you to look at your own financial journey in a different light.
Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive.